Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dave West, CEO here at Scrum.org. In today's podcast, we're lucky to be talking to ambarics about how they use professional Scrum to help their customers in the challenging world of ERP in the manufacturing industry. This is an interesting topic, not just because they're talking about ERP and manufacturing, which is super cool, but because they're using Scrum and Kanban. Some people say they're opposites, but actually, I think we're going to see here today how those opposites are actually complementary. And I've got two amazing people on the podcast to talk about it. I'd like to welcome Andre Bohn, consultant and project manager from ambarics. Welcome to the podcast, Andre.
Hello, nice to be here.
Now, he's a project manager and consultant, but we're not allowed to talk titles here, so apologies for that. But he's just really just an expert person that can help us today. And then we're also got Alex Hardt, from one of our PSTs, who actually taught them Scrum and Kanban and then allowed magic to happen. So welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you for this invitation and this great podcast we create here.
We'll see how good a podcast it is, but yes, we've got all the ingredients for it, so I really appreciate that. It's great to have you both here. All right, let's start, Andre, really on setting the scene for our listeners. Let's talk about what do you do, what the company does, what does ambarics do, and the sort of context for this work.
Sure thing. Well, ambarics is, I thought long and hard about it, but I think in the essence, we are like an franchisee. We have our software developer who codes and develops the ERP software. And we are in the middle between between the software and the clients who use the software. And though we have a high support focus, because our software developer does not do support stuff at all, we have to manage it. So we have always unplanned work, which is kind of hard. But we also do projects. We onboard new clients into our system. We manage everything around that. And we even have a development part where we develop new features and adjust existing features for the needs of our clients. That's basically it. You can guess that these pillars have some constraints. You can't do everything, and you have to work sometimes with the project development team of the ERP, sometimes with the customer, and it's always shifting, and it's never quite as clear. Of course, it's not really franchising, but I think franchising is like a close equivalent. To put it that
so
way.
it's a metaphor, that ultimately you are taking these things and representing in many different places. And the majority of your customers, Andre, are in sort of big German manufacturing and those kind of customers. Is that right?
Mostly small and middle caps. Like, no really big players, but the smaller ones.
Yeah, which is crucial because they need to take advantage of ERP, and of course they're part of a complex supply chain that no doubt is also using ERPs to manage the content and the work as it goes through. So you provide that service, and I think just to summarize as well, you've got changing requirements, customers, the platform. Lots of things very fluid, and lots of dynamism, as it were.
That's right.
Cool. All right, so let's actually talk a little bit about Professional Scrum and Kanban as a solution. So here you are working with your clients, you want to do Professional Scrum, or you're doing Professional Scrum, and then you thought, well, maybe Kanban would help, particularly around unplanned work. So talk us a little bit about why you started work with Kanban and Professional Scrum combined.
Ambarics was always interested to work in an agile manner.
Yeah.
We had in our small startup phase like three people in the same room, and it was always like a co-working session. Everybody had the same thing on the mind and stuff like that. But as we grew bigger and had more employees, the work got more and more fragmented. Like we have new rooms. Not everybody is sharing the room. We had to open communication channels, like somebody's in the home office and not on work. And therefore, the most crucial part why it became necessary to become more agile was we didn't inspect and adapt our processes for our employees. Like it's when I joined, we were like 8 people, and these 8 people worked like the 3 people in the same room. Nothing else changed, and therefore I saw the need to improve. I saw the need to adapt, and that's where I pondered around with frameworks that can do that. And mostly the 2 big frameworks I got were like Scrum and Kanban. Every system has, or framework, as you will, has trade-offs. Like, sure, Scrum is really good in a project setting if you have projects, but it's maybe not so good in unplanned work. And Kanban is really good at unplanned work, but not good for projects. So it was always a dichotomy to me that to get those 2 together, and I thought long and hard, but it could not ever figure it out on my own. And so I stand there and pondered, what the hell shall I do? That was when I got a self-learning day. We have those. We can ponder around and do something useful for the organization. And that was when I met Alex and his training on PSK. And I thought, well, that's excellent. Professional Scrum and Kanban combined. Those are the steps and the tools we need to implement a solution that works for us. Because as I outlined earlier, we have a complex work. We have always unplanned work items we cannot get ahead. And we have also project work. And this was like a dream scenario for me to have finally something that works together. Maybe Alex want to speak?
The interesting thing is, I would say, so in the class we teach, so you do professional Scrum, and then you add as a complementary practice Kanban, and they didn't have this Scrum, and they mixed it directly for themselves, and I never saw a company that I would say they did doing 100% Scrum. Andre and his team is also not doing it, but they're on the way to get out of the framework, what helps them to improve what they are doing. And in the end, I think it's about getting the most out for yourself and not applying Scrum by the book because it's told so.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I was the person that brought in Professional Scrum or Kanban at Scrum.org, and the reason why I felt quite passionately about the need to combine Kanban and Scrum, or to provide these complementary practices, Professional Scrum, or I guess if you were a Kanban shop, the complementary practices of Scrum to Kanban, was because what I saw was a lot of organizations were wrestling with unplanned work in sprints. They were wrestling with how to make things more transparent, and they were wrestling with how to make what metrics and decisions about improvement of both the product and of how they work, using data to drive that, and they were really challenged with that. And that was my motivation to work with Daniel Vacanti and Yuval Yavet, 2 people that I'd met on my journeys around the world that were really good at Kanban, and bring that into Scrum.org. So it's really really great to hear that it had some benefits. So tell me a little bit, I'd be interesting to hear, what was the sort of essential things that you got out of using Professional Scrum with Kanban, Andre?
Um, can you can you put your question a little more
Oh,
precisely, please?
yeah, okay, let's do that again.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit, how you use those practices. What practices stood out? Was it all around flow? Was it all around managing that transparent, sort of like visualization? Is it about WIP limits? What really were the key things that you took out of that training and applied in your organization?
Yes, the main thing was the added transparency with a Kanban board. Previously, everybody had his own work, but it was never formalized. Like, these are the things I'm working on right now. It was all hidden behind our support tickets and our system, but it was never clear, like, those are the things I'm currently working on right now. Those are the things that I'm planning to work on, and etc. So the first and the biggest thing was we had a formalized way of putting our work together to share it with everybody else. Now, even if I'm ill or if I'm on a vacation, everybody knows what's on my plate. Like, that's the first and the biggest positive change. Um, you can, it's phenomenal. With our sprint planning, we previously took like 2-hour meetings to get everything together because everybody forgets everything. Like, and oh, I remember there was something I wanted to address. And now we have a formalized way of sharing our work together. And so we can look at our board and we see what stuff is happening, what does not happen, where do we need to address some things. Is it our client that's lacking? Are we lacking? That's great. And we are down to like maybe half an hour for the sprint planning with that alone. So that's like a real benefit. And the other one is work in progress, or the limits of work in progress. Previously, we basically started everything. There was a request from the client. As soon as it got in, we wrote an email. Yes, we can do it. Maybe, maybe not. But now we are more precarious with that because not everything we cannot address everything at once. There has to be like a call, or somebody has to wait. And we are now more focused on finishing things than starting things. And this is like that was an eye opener for our team. And yeah, that's basically the most important parts.
Yeah,
Any
I think
questions?
yeah. So I just want to, and Alex, you're obviously much smarter than me about these things. But before Alex, you add a little bit, I'd like to just that work in progress thing. So I remember I was on, me and Yvel and Daniel did a little bit of a roadshow when we first brought this out. And so I visited lots of people and presented these things. And the biggest thing that I saw with all these quite good professional Scrum implementations was they had so many things in progress and there were so many invisible queues, where things were done but they weren't done because they were waiting on something else, and there was something else, and there's this cluster of work that was kind of like messy. And that at any one moment, exactly, if you, let's hopefully go on vacation, not on sick, but you sort of missed. It was really hard. It was very reliant on people, and I think that's one thing that resonates really well from your description, Andre. Alex, you're the expert here. Talk. Are these unusual things, or is this what you would expect after somebody went on a professional Scrum Kanban class?
So it happens not every time, or let's say not so often, that I really got noticed that people start implementing what happens after this class. And what happens in Andre's case was a huge success, I would say. That happens not every day. Mostly the challenge is for students, I think, in the class that they do not have the real authority to change things. And that was a real benefit of Andre and his team, that he as a project manager, let's say the lead of the team and the small size of the team, and he had a direct conversation with his executive who could change the environment for the good happens. The thing that WIP limits are too high, I think we see this everywhere, also in our personal life, not only in business. That is totally normal.
Yeah, sorry, so I'm laughing because as we're speaking, my Slack is like crazy, where there's like 7 different things running in parallel. So no,
Yes.
I don't believe that, Alex, at all. I don't suffer from that. Yeah.
Can imagine. So limiting the WIP, from my experience, also often is a challenge because people like and tend to start on work on everything. And for a lot of teams that I know and I worked with, this is the most important, but also the most challenging thing to tell people, like Andre said, finish first before you start something new. And how they achieve this, what I get out with the conversation that I had with Andre. So it was less that they explicitly limited their WIP. It's more what Andre said, they focused on the work item age. So they
Yeah.
took care to finish things before starting something new. So, and I think this is a good approach that is less rigid than, let's say, okay, now the WIP limit is, I don't know, 5.
Yeah.
And then creating an environment where people change their behavior, and let's focus on finish things and then starting things, and let's see what we can do to finish and get the work item age down. And that, I think, also satisfy Andre, your customers, when they get their stuff sooner in a more predictable way, isn't it?
Exactly right. I think most of our customers didn't recognize any change because their expectation was always it was done yesterday. But besides that, we saw huge improvements. One thing that the Kanban board made transparent was quiet tickets. Many times somebody sends in a request and never touches back on their own. And if you're not well structured or have policies around it, you would never notice that there was something laying dormant and not getting addressed. And the Kanban board for us helped us to identify those tickets or support cases and wrestle with them and get in touch in a proactive manner. Yeah. And even then, when we asked directly and needed feedback on something critical, even then we got horrendous item ages. I think if we would not have had an Kanban board or a Kanban approach, those tickets would have never seen the light of day. Like they would have lain always dormant in our backlog, but got never addressed. And so I think it's really a change because everything that's in progress is in progress, and you can even not guarantee that it's with a low item age, but you can guarantee that you work on it. And I think that's a huge part. And I think in the long run, those changes our customers will notice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Alex, you've got something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add, so Andre's a smart guy, not only consultant and project manager, but also some kind of developer also. And the nice thing that they had, so their Kanban board, let's say also kind of their sprint backlog, is a combination also with the work item age, so chart. So you can see the work item age, and they have some kind of traffic light system implemented in their Kanban board. And I also see the age of the items directly in their Kanban board. That's a very nice thing. So that is even more visualization in a direct way, I would say, instead of having two boards and charts that you need to flip and check all the time.
Yeah, it's funny you say that as well, because Yavel, when I did this roadshow, the technique that he used was he used a banana skin. And he
Yes.
said every item that you put on is a banana and it has a
Yeah.
skin sitting there. Because I don't do this at home, but I remember when I was a student, you'd find a banana skin somewhere around your apartment, and you'd be like, "What the heck happened here?" But these things get brown and yucky and slimy after a while. It's so much. I'm glad you implemented that technology rather than using bananas, which yeah, a bit of a waste of good bananas, hey. So that's awesome. And just to lean in a little bit, you said, well, most customers didn't notice it. It's funny that they'd have noticed this if you hadn't got this, right? Isn't that, that's sort of like, it's almost like a hygiene factor in terms of if you don't have these practices in place, you get escalations, you get unhappy customers, you get those sort of like those fire moments where everybody has to work over the weekend because customers' expectations were different to your expectations, and suddenly there was a moment where you realize that. Have you seen perhaps some improvements in that long term? I mean, you're already an awesome company, but now you're an even better company, right?
I think so. It's hard to tell because I never lived in a life or in a company or a timeline, so to say, where we did not implement it. Therefore,
Yeah.
it's hard to say, but I think gut feeling, it's better. We have less escalations. We are
Yeah.
more transparent about our workload. We can totally say to our customers, or argument with it, like, sure, we can do this thing, but something else has to wait. Which should it be? And usually that's like a fair point. Please finish the worked items first. Like those are also benefits of it.
Yeah, I love that. Having those open conversations with stakeholders, and particularly the stakeholders that write checks, is perhaps the best and the most valuable thing you can possibly do. I think it's awesome. All right, so we could talk about Kanban and professional Scrum for hours, but I guess what our listeners would really like to know. All right, so our listeners are listening to this podcast, obviously, and thank you for your time doing it. And they're thinking, that's great. Well, what can I do? What should I do next? What should that be, Andre? What would you tell people that haven't combined the power of professional Scrum and Kanban together?
Well, I think there's no real downside in doing it. That's the first part. It's not professional Kanban or Scrum.
Yeah,
It's professional Scrum with Kanban,
yeah,
and it complements each other, I think. And even if you don't have the means to do it fully well, which would be perfect, I think starting it is also good enough. Start with limiting your work in progress. Work on less things. Start to be more transparent and benefit from more transparency. Those two steps alone are worth a lot. And honestly, start there. That would be my first thing, and then figure it out from there. Like it's already thought out what you have to do, what you can do, how you measure it, how you define it, and stuff like that. Though nothing holds you back, to put it that way.
that's awesome advice. Make it transparent. Start getting that whip so it's really transparent. Start looking at aging, and then use that as the basis to be continuous improvement. Alex, anything to add?
let's say somehow the unfair advantage of Andre's team, I think, is the bond that they had in their team and the small size of the company. And also that before they already had this kind of team spirit and teamwork, I think that made a lot things for them easier implementing this. And yeah, there are a lot of good frameworks, Kanban, Scrum, combining Scrum with Kanban. In the end, it's about the people and the great work that they're doing. So if you have awesome people, there are a lot of good things that they can use and show their awesomeness.
I 100% agree. It gives, this is, and to be honest, that's true of Scrum in its most basic level. It is all about amplifying the power of people, or as Ken say, amplifying the stupidity of your team. Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, and he just used it to make bad team decisions really, really transparent. He hoped that they would then fix those decisions, and Kanban really is just the same. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing this awesome story with our listeners. I'm inspired to sort of go back to my own backlog and my own work with my team and actually spend a little bit more time thinking about aging. It is funny, and you may have seen this as well, Andre, that over time you sort of forget. You put these practices in, and then time, aging starts to affect the process, and you forget about them. So I'm definitely going to go back and think a little bit more about some of the things that are on our backlog, and ensure that we're keeping an eye on some of those aging things. So I appreciate that. That really, really does help me. But thank you, Alex, Andre, for joining us today on the Scrum.org Community Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dave, for inviting us.
Great. And for the listeners, there's an awesome case study that you can have a look at. If you haven't got time to listen to our dulcet tones online, and it'll be connected to this podcast. So today, you heard from ambarics talking about how they use Scrum and Kanban together to really manage the complexities of dealing with stakeholders and customers in a system that's always improving and getting better, combining that power of product-based development with Scrum with that flexibility that Kanban provides us with. I guess if there was one sentence that sums it up, that really is the best practice, let's start finishing and stop starting. I think Andre did a really good job describing that. I instantly thought t-shirt. Let's start finishing and stop starting. How many times have you started something without actually really finishing the thing that you were on before? It's great. That's sage advice here that you heard today on today's podcast. So thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, share with friends, and of course, come back and listen to some more. I'm lucky enough to have a variety of guests talking about anything and everything in the areas of professional Scrum, product thinking, and of course, Agile, and maybe a little bit of Kanban today. Thanks, everybody, and Scrum on.